20th, and we'll call this special City Commission budget work session to order. If we could have a roll call, please.
Mayor Gary,
Here.
Commissioner Bauer, Commissioner Bospis Rath,
Here.
Commissioner Collins, Commissioner Miller,
Here.
Commissioner Talentino,
Here.
Commissioner Twardy.
Here.
Commissioner Bauer had a meeting or a conflict at 4 o'clock, but will be here shortly, and I have not heard from Commissioner Collins.
I move that we do not excuse Commissioner Collins.
Support. Moved and supported. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so if we could please stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. I know we are not supposed to refer to our phones during a meeting, but somebody had sent me 2 questions in regard to the budget that he wants me to ask at that particular time, so I'll probably pick it up to read my text, so just so you know, I'm not playing on my phone, I'm trying to get a note for the city manager, so. We will move right to B, special orders of business, review of budget for fiscal year 2022, 2023. City Manager Chapman.
All righty. Here we go. This is the first in-live person I've had with you guys, so and we'll see how this goes. So, good?
Yep. Spillage.
All right, before we get started, you guys, looks like you guys got snacks. There's snacks in the back if the staff wants them too, so we're going to be here for a while. So, all right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So today is a budget hearing, workshop, budget workshop, not hearing, budget workshop. We have given to you the recommended budget for next fiscal year. We'll go through it kind of in chunks, some areas line by line. We have a general schedule here that we'll try to keep to. Commissioner Bospis Rath is going to try to sneak out a little early because she's got that newborn baby that she's got to go take care of. So we're going to start off with kind of the bigger funds, and then we'll get to the smaller ones when we get to them. So we're going to try to crunch through this as much as we can, try to avoid a second one tomorrow. The process is the same as what it's been in the years before. As we go through it, if you have any questions, or you want to discuss something, by all means, interrupt me, flag me down, do something, and we can talk about it. If you have hits or wishes, just like we did in previous years, I think typically the commission makes those hits or wishes. There's not much discussion on them. Staff will follow up with any kind of analysis on that, and then we'll follow up with them on Monday at 4:15 during the budget reconciliation meeting. Any questions before we start? All right, so we'll just hop right into it. So we got the recommended budget for you for next fiscal year. Give me a second, Bonnie, and I'll flag you down when I go there, because I'm not even on the right screen right now. And I can't minimize that. Never mind. All right. The budget before you is the culmination of staff working on it the last few months here. The capital project started off December-ish. Worked through that. The last couple of months we've been working on operations. There were a good deal of cuts that we had to do again to the budget. For the most part, the budget recommended to you that we're reviewing maintains service levels that we had last year. We were able to retain the number of staff members we have. We did refund the 3 firefighter positions at the fire department, so that's in there. There were still some cuts that we had to do. You'll see in the revenues that we are anticipating some increased revenues from tax, the state shared revenue system. There's a couple of new revenues in there too. But for every step we take forward with revenues, expenditures follows very closely, if not exceeds that to a certain extent, for a variety of reasons. Everything is more expensive now, as we've discussed in other meetings, with inflation, the cost of doing business. In talking to Director Twos the other day, even little things that are made in Michigan, like fire hydrants, have doubled in price. So they've gone from about 1,800 to 3,600 or so, right, Kirk? 3,900, even worse. And that's, that's on top of the gas prices that we've seen an increase in, and everything else is just increased. So we make a little bit of leeway with some revenues, but expenditures follow up shortly. So I wouldn't say we're necessarily in a better financial position than what we were last year. Things are still really tight. We've made it work this year. We have satisfied any contractual obligations that we have for wage increases. This year, the collective bargaining contracts had a 2% wage increase. We did make an assumption in the budget as well for the non-reps to have a similar 2% wage increase. That will be followed up with commission action if we get through the budget here in a couple months before the start of the new fiscal year. So for the most part, we're okay. You'll see that our operations are still in place. One of the challenges we have next fiscal year and years after will be capital expenditures, the large purchases or the large projects. We don't have a lot of residual funding for those types of activities. So we'll go over that stuff in a little bit here. Before I start off, just want to thank the staff for the hours they put in the budget. Certainly Director Collins and Deputy Manager Robin Troyer for their work in the budget and compiling everything. It's a long process and it's a stressful process at times, but we're here and we're ready to go over it with you all. So we will hop into it. We'll start off with the general fund. If you want to pop to page 3 in your budget books, I'm going to try to work off the computer here a little bit. Let's see how well it pulls up on the screen. Bonnie, you want to throw it up on the screen? Oh yeah, can you read that, Mr. Miller? Sorry.
It's okay, I got one right in front of me.
I know. All right, so just kind of hopping in the general fund here. So first couple of pages within the budget are our expected revenues moving forward. The orange column is the recommended budget for next year. The green one is for 2 years out. We're really going to focus in on the orange column, the 2022-23 manager recommended budget. Looking years back, you can see for the most part there is a slight increase in the tax revenue that we're expecting. There's an increase in city operating, expecting an increase in solid waste. A couple of in lieu of tax payments are coming in there too. So we're seeing a slight increase in the taxes. If you move down to federal and state sources, we have some increases. For the most part, they're stagnant. You'll see one of our new revenue sources in here is the state marijuana revenue sharing funding source. That is the city's share of the excise tax on recreational marijuana that's sold at the dispensaries. So this year, it's the first year that we're being given that funding. It's about $112,000. Next year, we are anticipating an increase in funding because we'll have more active permits within the city. So we're estimating that at about $225. But so this fiscal year is $112. Next year, we're anticipating about $225. If you move down a little bit lower, you see the state revenue sharing payments, constitutional and statutory. You can see there's a slight increase in those two. 1.1 is what we had last year, going to 1.2, and 4.5 to almost $500,000. So a little bit of increases there. Any questions on those ones yet? Yes, sir.
I've got one in the marijuana one.
Yep.
The $112,000, I don't know if it's close enough or not. The $112,000 is based on how many facilities operating right now in the city?
2.
2. So the increase from that to the 220, you're anticipating more facilities or collecting more revenue? From
Both.
that?
So we'll have tentatively, we got 5 permits out right now. Yeah, we got 5 permits out right now. So there would be an increase in the number of permits for our share of the collection, but the projection, so it's a portion of the sales as well. So
okay.
there's still a big boom in sales across the state for recreational marijuana. So it's a combination of a few more permits and then the sales not slowing down.
Okay, thank you.
I think it was one of the stronger sales streams during COVID, to tell you the truth, is one of the articles I read, so. So that's the federal and state sources there, a little bit of an increase. Charges for services, you can see the list of services that we charge for. Most of them are staying at the same level. There's not a lot of increases. One of our more larger ones is the ambulance service. We're estimating that to bring in about $1.4 million, but with some adjustments and some billings not falling through, it's gonna be knocked down a little bit, but we do record those negatives there. You can see the increases for the particular programs. I'm not gonna necessarily go by them line by line unless you guys want me to. Are there any questions on those? All right, moving on to the next section is licenses and permits. You see the second of the marijuana revenue sources in that area. That is for the facility permits. We have most of the permits in right now, so we're anticipating not a change in that funding source for next year. But at the time of the distribution, which the state committed to us, they took active permits that have been in operation. So we're gonna see about the same number of permits, but we'll see that revenue side increase a little bit in the future. Same fees, you see the permits for sign, mechanical, trailer license, the various fees we have there. Moving down a little bit, you got the interest earnings, which isn't a big money draw for us. Property rentals, miscellaneous. We got some donations in there, so kind of running through them pretty quick. Any questions? In total, the general fund's expected to bring in about $13,650,000 for next year. So that's kind of our starting point for our expenditures.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Towards the top there, the Sherman Park, sorry, gotta keep doing that. The Sherman Park Pavilion, so the $5,000,
Yep.
that's for redoing it, fixing it?
No, that's revenue. For revenues
So
coming
that's
in.
revenue from people bringing, okay,
Yes.
all right, thank you.
Yep. Not a problem. So any question about the revenues? All right. We will hop into the expenditures. So first and foremost, the most important one is the city commission budget, 101. So for the most part, it's pretty straight. We haven't increased too much. Wages are straight, your FICAs are straight, dues and subscriptions, I think there's a slight decrease there. We still have a travel and training budget projected at about $5,000 for the commission, and the Chamber of Commerce dues for $1,200. So not a lot of change there. Pretty static moving forward. Any questions on that? All right, moving down to city manager's budget. City manager's budget consists of myself and the executive assistant that's currently filled by Sue. There's a slight decrease expected in the salaries. Sue's gonna be retiring this year, and the wage will kind of be reset for that one, so there's a little bit decrease there, but for the most part, everything is going straight. One of the bigger changes is in the travel and training budget. It's up to $10,000. We didn't have a line item to put in any kind of organizational training, but there's been some conversations about doing more organizational training. So we put the extra funds in there. And I think that was something that kind of came out from the recent fire chief, that we should have more opportunities for different types of training. So that's kind of what that line item is increased. There's still some travel dollars in there for me for conferences, but the bulk of it is for organizational training. Any questions on that one? Alrighty. All right, heading down to the general appropriations. This is a series of line items that support and fund other operations. We have the dial-a-ride pass-throughs. There is a dial-a-ride appropriation, EDC appropriation, and DDA appropriation. For the most part, they have held straight. There is a cut to the EDC appropriation. Everything else kind of maintains where they're at. The dial-a-ride appropriation and the DDA appropriation, those are funds that are figured out that they absolutely need that dollar amount in order to operate. So that kind of balances their budget in that sense. The EDC appropriation was cut in order to assist in balancing the budget. Like I said, we had to put in back 3 firefighter positions, There were some concerns about what that funding does go towards, so it was a tough recommendation, but that is something that we're recommending cutting down to 0. Any questions there? Yeah. Yep. All right. No questions or comments with the appropriations. We will move down to the finance department. Was that, oh, Kristen, just remember to put on your mic. Otherwise, you're gonna have Bonnie screaming for Mike, and we're gonna ask who that is again. All right, the finance department is the next budget, 101, 201. For the most part, it's where it was last year. There's no increase in employees. One thing to point out, and this isn't specific to the department itself, but this is going to be something you see in some of these other budgets. There's an increase in the MERS DB pension amount. For this particular department, you can see that it's projected at $86,000. Next year, we're anticipating it being at $152,000. And that's for the employees that follow under the older pension system. Those contribution amounts are having to increase. So you won't see it in every budget. You'll see it in the next couple of budgets, but that's something that's driving some of the expenditures within the operating budgets as well. So for the most part, we had an amended budget of 567. We're going up to 674. And again, that's the cost of business as well as the pension payments going up there. Any questions in finance? All right, rolling through it. The city clerk's budget is up next, 101-215. Same thing with the city clerk's budget. There's an increase in the pension. Salaries have been increased because we're anticipating 2% across the board for the employees per the negotiated contracts, as well as the non-reps to follow suit with that. Most line items are still staying pretty straight. No major increases anywhere else. There is one line item you'll start to see that's something new in the budgets. It's the equipment rental internal services, and that's the charges for the budgets that go for like our mechanics working on our vehicles. We still have to pay for that, or we have to show some kind of dollar amount being transferred to that. So that's a new line item that you'll start to see throughout the budgets as well. I just wanted to point that out. So, any questions on the city clerk budget? All right, roll into the assessor. The assessor's office, 101-257. Employee levels are the same. We have an assessor and a deputy assessor. Expenditures are pretty much same across the board, no major increases there. We do have contracted services remaining at about $30,000, $35,000. That is for our tax appraiser that assists us on any kind of tax challenge. Typically it's Miles Anderson. We do bid it out when we have the opportunity to, but he's typically the one that always gets it. So nothing major in there. That is probably the one variable within that contracted services. It could go up, it could go down. This is what we feel is a good dollar amount moving forward. Any questions there? Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, can I go back on that equipment rental internal services? How is that different from stock and equipment that we used to charge to?
Yeah.
It is that?
Yeah.
Just renamed? Ah, yeah, microphone.
It is stock and equipment, and
Okay.
we just are separating because some equipment rental, you'll see throughout later in the budget, some equipment rental is renting from an outside source.
Okay. Thanks.
All righty. Oh, where are we at? So that's the assessor. Any questions on the assessor's budget? No major changes there. City Hall is the line items that pay for City Hall, water, sewer, electricity, repair and maintenance. No major increases there. I think we have equipment repair and maintenance that's going up about $5,000 or so. The building's still very nice, but there are some components of it that are starting to age out. So we're anticipating some increase in maintenance throughout the building. Right, Robin? Yeah. Any questions on that one? All right, next budget is our attorney budget. The attorney services are still contracted out. There's a increase in the legal fees contracted services up to $75,000. as we've gotten out of COVID, there's been some more need for our legal resource, but there's also a contract for local prosecuting services with the county prosecutor's office that we pay for. So that $75,000 is about 25 for local prosecution and then 50 for legal fee services. The $40,000 is for any kind of attorney service that we need. That's typically Jack with Foster Swift regarding the tax tribunal. We have a couple of things that could come through next fiscal year, but we're not sure where they'll end up. So we feel this dollar amount's a good amount, but it could go up higher, it could go lower. Hopefully it goes lower. Any major increase in that is what we've done in the past, and what we started to do is we'll bring those cases to you individually. We'll have a discussion in closed session, talk about the case, and see where we want to go with that. So 40,000 kind of helps Tina out with a lot of the paperwork type of processing. So, yes, ma'am.
Can you just compare, because a lot of us were asking the question when we no longer had a city attorney, how this was going to compare with that? I can't remember what the city attorney actually made and what is the cost difference between these two.
So so basically what's the cost difference between when we had a city attorney versus what we're doing right now? So it kind of varied, but for the most part, the city attorney had a salary of roughly $55,000, somewhere around there. But then there were certain tasks in which his firm would charge the city, and that was dependent on what was happening at the time. So one of the items, for example, was labor relations, contract negotiations. There was obviously ebbs and flows. There was more during certain years. Same thing with tax tribunals. He got an extra. The firm charged us for that too. So, he had a salary of about $50,000. There was probably anywhere between another 50 to maybe even at times another 100,000 that went out for that. So it just depends on what you're looking at. In general, we're probably saving some money. Again, it depends on what year you're going to really look at, but yeah, does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, it does,
A little bit.
Yeah, 50, but it was 50 plus fringe, right?
It was 50 plus, was 50 in fringe and pension, but then his firm got to bill us for extra
Other
services.
services.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think it was tax tribunal, labor relations, more or less, and then. Any what?
Any like legal representation?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So on the fiscal year ending 6/30/19, the actual was 192,000 and change.
Okay, okay.
But that includes the MTT of 111,000. So that was kind of a big year.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Alrighty, moving down to fringe benefits. This is a smaller one that carries, or covers retirees benefits, correct?
Yeah, just a little.
Yep. Yep.
Retirees' life.
Retirees life insurance, so little increase there. I keep hitting this mic. That's annoying. Alrighty. Any questions on those two last budgets? Next budget, we're getting into our police department. Police department, we have able to fill all the positions. So there's some increases because of the contractual wage increases. That's all reflected in the fringe benefits as well. We did split out some of the overtime charges based on specific events. I'm just trying to find them. So overtime in general, overtime OWI grant, which we get a grant for doing drunk driving enforcement, seatbelt grant. Stone Garden is one of our special task force. Overtime for safe trails. So we kind of broke them out. It just helps kind of keep track of them in that way. There are some increases that are new to this year. One of the bigger ones is the training budget. Historically, it's been about $1,000 to $2,000. We've upped that to $10,000 as Chief West has been working with Chief Beerling has been working with the department. He's seen a increased need for some more training, everything ranging from supervisor training down to technical training, how to process evidence, how to take evidence out of garbage can, evidence handling, things of that nature. So we do have an increase in the training item for that one. For the most part, everything else is pretty static moving forward. with the police department, we have a sub-department for Trident, which is some of the undercover work that we do. I believe there's an outside funding source that comes in for that too as well, right? Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. So that has its own budget there. Still staying within the police department, we have our auxiliary police department, which is on page 10 now. For the most part, again, that's staying pretty much static. We did lower some of the wages because they won't be utilized as much this fiscal year or as the next fiscal year as they were in fiscal years past, because we've contracted out that security service with the cruise ships because they didn't have the staff personnel for that one. So there's a decrease in there. But they'll still be around to handle some of the community events and the smaller activities such as that. So any major questions or concerns within the police department? All right, we're hauling. Next budget is the fire budget. This one you won't see necessarily the increase in the new staff members. They'll be newer. They typically fall under the ambulance budget. So you see that a little bit down there. But again, wages are increasing a little bit per the contracts. For the most part, everything else is pretty static, moving across the board. Any major questions there? None? All hearing none, we shall move on. Next budget, 101441 is Public Works. This is our general budget for DPW. This is sidewalk stuff, right-of-way stuff, anything that's not billed out to a other street fund, like the major or the locals or stock and equipment. So this covers a pretty big gauntlet of activities. Again, Public Works staff are broken up to a series of different budgets, so you can't look at here and say, well, how many people are $134,000 worth of people? It's not necessarily the case, but for the most part, we don't have too many major increases moving forward. It's pretty steady going across. The one thing to point out is there is an increase in the safety committee for DPW. Historically, it doesn't look like we have anything, but last year we put in about 5,000. This year we are upping it to 28,000. What we have kind of found with the new core of department heads in Public Works, Mr. Masterson, Mr. Tews, and Mr. Perrin, and even Mr. Boyle to a certain extent, we don't have a lot of training programs or safety programs in place. We're kind of flying by the seat of our pants on certain things. This $28,000 will be used to contract with a firm to come up here, put those programs in place for us to be able to maintain them moving forward. In order for us, if we were to kind of recreate the wheel on our own, given a lot of our deficiencies, it would take us a lot of time to be able to do that. So we just want to bring a firm up, get it done, have them put in the policies, put in the programs. There will be a safety committee that will be administered within the city. We'll manage those policies and that programs moving forward. But we just recently had we were just recently fined by OSHA because of some of our lack of safety protocols that we have. So it was a small fine, I think it was $1,500, but it could have been a lot worse, and it can be a lot worse depending on what we're doing and if we don't have the proper programs and safety protocols in place. So we do have an increase there, but it's a one-time kind of increase, and it'll help us create a program that we'll manage in the future. So any questions on that one? Alrighty, engineering department, 101447. For the most part, the budget's static going across as well. This still pays for city engineer, his project specialist, staff engineer, the GIS person, as well as one or two interns that we'll pick up in the summertime to help do some field work get all the projects that we have going on there. So for the most part, everything is static going forward. I think there's an increase in contracted services, which is used for survey work and some field work for the larger projects that we have to do. We typically haven't budgeted for that, and then we kind of scramble for that. So the $9,500 is going to be used for survey type work out in the field. Any questions there? All right, rolling on. Cemetery is cemetery. This covers the operations of the cemetery. For the most part, everything is static going through, not any major increases per line items. Pretty static. This provides for a couple of staff members to manage and maintain the cemetery throughout the summer. We do have some part-time seasonal help that we bring on to help, especially the beginning of the year, because it gets pretty bad, but pretty much the same moving forward. Any questions, cemetery? Nothing? Sure?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Okay.
15 years ago, that was my first hit, and I'm not gonna bring it up again. Yeah, I hit some parts of that.
Alrighty, moving down to airport. 101,595. So this is the budget for the airport up on Sanderson Field. For the most part, it's steady going across there. The one thing I want to point out, it's not on here, and there really hasn't been a decision made on it yet. Under contracted services, we have $80,000 that pays for our, not FBO, FSO, field, no, B, it is B, FBO. What's FBO stand for again?
Fixed base operator.
Fixed base operator, thank you. I was thinking field something, but $80,000 for our fixed base operator. Last week or so, maybe it's 2 weeks ago, they came in with a request for an increase in their contractual amount due to their revenues falling short based on the air traffic not being what it used to be for COVID. They're asking for another $40,000. I have not brought that to the commission yet. I've not given an answer yet, but just as an FYI, that's out there. And I don't have a recommendation to or not do it right now, but it's just something we'll work through as we move forward. So, any questions on the airport? Mr. Bauer?
Good afternoon, everybody. My apologies.
That's all right. There's some snacks in the back if you're hungry, if you want to grab something.
Coffee is good.
All right.
It's the only snack I need.
Just give you a second to set up here.
You can go ahead while
All right.
We're on page 1.
Yeah.
I was gonna cheat off Tim.
And that's why I haven't even been moving the screen. I kind of forgot about that. No, I know. Bonnie, if you want, you can just take the screen off. I'm not even sticking up with it, so people can just watch me babble. All right, next budget, Mr. Bauer, we're on page 13. We're just getting into.
Funny that you think there's people.
So is the audit online, just in case they want to see it?
Is the what?
Is the, or the budget?
Yeah, yep, so the budget is online. It's under the board docs as an agenda item. The budget, the capital, the fund balances, and the sewer and water information are all part of that item. So anybody can pull that up at any point. So, all right, next item is the Kent Marina. For the most part, staying pretty static. Again, no major increases there. Harvey Marina, staying pretty static there. We'll reevaluate. Tyler and I have already talked about Harvey Marina several times. It should be a surprise to you, but we're going to try to do more with Harvey Marina as we can. We'll reevaluate that. He's got some projects planned within the existing budget, and he'll have some other ones planned for the next budget. But as we work with the user group that will form here in the summertime and get some feedback, I think you'll see some increases in some of these line items to put a little money back into the Harvey Marina. So, any questions there? All right, we'll move on to the next one, 599. 101,599 is the dock, Carbide Dock Valley Camp. This pays for some of the services associated with the cruise ship landings right now. With the Carbide Dock not being finished yet, it probably will be in the next couple of years. This budget will be primarily for the Carbide Dock and the cruise ships or any kind of landings that will happen there. So there's some part-time staff that we have there with our port manager. Is that what we call them?
Our carbide dock manager.
Yeah, car by dock manager. There's some part-time hours there. There's some contracted services built into the budget now for where we have to land the cruise ships right now. The private security services are in there, and then everything else is just general operating stuff. So there's a slight increase there, but hopefully some of these things will fall off in the next couple of years once we get the Dave Boyle Memorial Car by Dock done.
Memorial. Having issues?
Nope, that's just what I'm gonna name it. Doesn't matter.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
The line item for private security services,
Yes, sir.
is that for, is that for what we voted for?
Yes, sir.
I thought it was more than that.
I probably will be a little bit more than that. We weren't quite sure what the number was when we were going through this, but it'll be an increase in that too.
All right, thanks.
Alrighty. Moving down, Department 651, 101-651 is the ambulance. You'll see an increase in the wages associated with hiring back or filling the 3 firefighter position, firefighter, EMP, or paramedic positions. Everything else, if there's an increase within the fringe benefits associated with adding those 3 positions back. For the most part, everything else stays static going across. We are counting on COVID not being a thing moving forward, so you'll see there's a decrease in that line item. But for the most part, everything's pretty static moving across the board. Any questions on that one?
I noticed that you added training in with them as well.
Probably did.
Right.
I'm trying to think. Yeah. Yeah, there's a slight increase in, or it's probably historically about what they always were.
Okay.
I think there'll probably be something that the new fire chief will evaluate. And, you know, we have the state grant out there that we're hoping we're gonna get for more training. But for the most part, since we've been in a transition with the fire chief, it's been pretty static. That's the way we kind of took it across the board. So I imagine as he gets in and once he has an opportunity to go through the department in a cycle or so, and he starts to put together his budget next year, there'll probably be some changes there, and we'll try to accommodate the best we can, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Post-COVID travel has begun. I have about 6 travel forms sitting right
Yeah.
here.
Alrighty, if there's no other questions in that department, we shall move down to community development. Community development pays for our community development director, code enforcement officer, their administrative assistant, as well as the building official. Nothing major in this particular budget in terms of increases. Everything's pretty static. There was an increase in expenditure request from the director for $2,400. We cut it back down to $4,000. $20,000 was to be utilized for a potential demolition next year. We did end up cutting it to help, again, budget balance the budget, but there could be another funding opportunity outside of this to still be able to facilitate that demolition. So we'll come back to you with that in that one, but for the most part, everything else is pretty much the same there. Any questions there? Yeah, all right, the next one, 101-728 is the EDC budget. This is, they describe this mostly a pass-through from their own budget. So everything else is pretty static, line by line for them. No major changes proposed from that staff. All right. We'll hop down to the next one, 775, 101-775 on Osborne. On Osborne pays for the 1 full-time employee, the Parks and Rec manager, or the Parks, what is it? The Recreation Coordinator, sorry. Recreation Coordinator, backfilled with some seasonal work to help run the campground. You'll see not a major increase in any of those line items going across there. For the most part, the expenditures stay pretty in line with the years prior. Any questions on Osborne? And on Osborne has been doing real good for us the last couple of years. I mean, last summer was a good year. Year before that was a good summer. I think the number of reservations we're seeing so far this year, it continues to be a very good draw for us. So,
Did you explain on these, the MERS pension, why that is double?
yes, so it's the increase in required contribution.
On it?
What?
Well, it was on every category, I guess.
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah,
Okay, that's what you
yeah,
said.
yeah.
Okay.
Yep, and more or less, there are more retirees than people paying into the system now, right? It's kind of the shift, so to say.
Right, and departments that have new hires have a lower cost, so you'll see that cost is spread between fewer departments. So where there are, I hate to call us old hires, but that's what we are, I call us, where we have the old hires is where you really see the big hit, bigger than you'd even see percentage-wise of the total increase.
So this is a result of their changes and assumptions and all the requirements
Yes, it's
over the
that.
last, yeah.
It's that and that cost being spread among fewer people because the
Okay.
retirees then subtract and then it leaves it among the remaining.
Almost double?
Yep,
Yep.
yep. Any other questions? All right, we'll hop down to Parks Maintenance, 101,776. Again, no major changes in programming or line items. Some increases in the, oh no, that would stay pretty flat. The DB pension, but pretty straightforward. No major increases there. Any questions there? Next one is the secondary budget to that one for the winter time. That is the Polar. No changes in terms of scheduling or anything like that. So for the most part, again, it's the services are remaining where it's at. So the costs are remaining where they're at. Total budget's about $405,000. That includes the staff to run the event or run the facility throughout the hockey season, and the associated expenditures to maintain it, heat it, water it, all that stuff. Any questions on that one? All right, next one is another park budget, 101,779, Sioux Seal Recreational Area. Excuse me for a second. Sioux Seal Recreational Area, that is our fantastic hill and facility up on there. Nothing major, again, in changes from the services. I think there's a decrease in some of the part-time seasonal wages, and that's a result of last year we lowered the number of days operating from, what was it, Tuesday through Sunday to Thursday through Sunday this year. And we did that during COVID time. We didn't get a lot of complaints about it. We didn't feel we lost any consumers or customers. We obviously lost some of the Canadians that typically come over because we didn't have the bridge open for them, but we didn't really see a lot of negative feedback that we were only open those 4 days a week, and those were typically our more popular days a week. So we ran with it, and we're going to continue to run with it. So it works out. Any questions on Sioux Seal? All right, next one is 101,780, beautification. This pays for the planters along I-75 and throughout the city, correct? Yes. So we have a part-time staff person we hire in the summertime. She does a fantastic job. That's kind of her bailiwick. I know there's been some people that have came forward to volunteer to take over some on the 75 spur, but that'll just give us the option to kind of deploy her elsewhere too, possibly. So, small budget, but very important budget to help the city maintain its aesthetic looks. Any questions there?
Just a comment, I do like seeing the docents added back into the historic homes.
That's the next budget.
Oh, that's the next line. Oh, it is, 804. So that's my comment for the docents.
We can,
Is that an ad?
we can skip that budget. No, so
See
then,
into the future.
so if there's no questions on beautification, we'll hop down to 101-804 historic homes. We have refunded that program, but it's not necessarily because of the revenues were there for the general fund to be able to offset that. We're proposing a transfer from
Osborne operating.
Osborne operating to pay for that. So we made it general fund neutral, and we'll have to approve those trusts, or that, transfer. Transfer is the word.
It's a
But-
great idea, because that's really what the Osborne is for.
Yeah.
The Osborne Trust is for, so good
Yeah.
job.
So it's, until it runs out of income.
Yeah.
I would say that's my concession on that budget, so. Any questions there? All right. So that's the majority of the operating budget for the general fund there. Just kind of going down to capital outlay. We'll talk more about this in detail. Capital equipment, you can see we're not buying a lot of capital within the general fund. And this is specifically for equipment. We've got $18,000 programmed in for SCBA's with the fire department, their breathing apparatuses, and then $75,000 for a new mower for the parks department. So that's really kind of all the capital that we have, but there are some transfers out to some other items on there, but we just don't have a lot of capital. So we're making some purchases, but there's probably a lot more that we could do if we had some extra funding, but. Next line item, debt service, principal, and the interest, nothing major there. Transfers out. There's a transfer out for debt service, $233,000. Transfer out for capital projects, we'll get into that a little bit more. This year, we're transferring out to the parking deck, and that's mostly the bond payment on the parking deck, $340,000. And then a transfer out to stock and equipment, which is another one of our operating funds, in the amount of $350,000. And that transfer is kind of, it can be a variable number, it could be a little bit lower, it could be a little bit higher, but that's basically where we're estimating the transfer has to be to balance out the stock and equipment. And we'll get into stock and equipment in a little bit here, so. So overall, your general fund is poised to bring in, I don't have it here. Revenues. Well, our total appropriations proposed is 13,647,000. If you take that in comparison to the revenues that we discussed earlier, we have a positive $2,000. So, good work. So, that's the general fund and a quick down and dirty again. Kind of the key highlights, we're retaining the staff. We are filling the 3 holes of the fire department that we have to. Operations are static, which isn't a bad thing. We're not having to cut services deeply. So overall, it's not a bad thing. Capital worries me, but
I'm not gonna say, I have my microphone on, but I changed my mind. I'm not gonna say anything. We're just gonna hold our breath for the entire year.
any,
Before we move on, I thought we'd give Commissioner Bauer an opportunity. I don't know if on the first 13 pages, we didn't do any hits or wishes, so. Good with that?
Yeah.
Okay,
okay.
thanks.
All right, so that is the general fund operations. Now we're gonna deviate from your book for a second, because I wanna go over some of the high points and some other areas, just in case Jody has to leave or the case we have to do. So we are gonna hop to general fund balance for the time being. And I'm gonna pull it up here as soon as I can find it. General fund. Tab A, yes, tab A in your book. That is gonna be page 1 in tab A, but in your electronic document, there's gonna be another PDF called FB calculation. Correct,
Yeah, GFFB.
Oh, I do see the GF, sorry. Bonnie, you wanna throw this one up on the screen? This is big enough that everybody can see it if they can't find it in their books there. Alrighty, oops. Bugger. Gosh darn it.
Get your little hamburger up on the,
This guy?
Hamburger?
Hamburger.
that, yeah, that was the
It worked. That's all right.
My apologies, what is this called? The
G-
PDF?
Oh,
GFFB.
GFFB.
got it.
Yep.
All right,
Yep. I'll give you a second to pull it up.
I'm there.
All right, perfect. So this shows us our fund balance ratio for the general fund. The city has a policy in place that we have to maintain a general fund balance of, is it 16 to
15 to 20.
15 to 20%. You'll see in the orange column on the far side there, the manager recommended budget as it is should keep us at the 20.92%. And then, Kristen, remind me again what the difference between the two rows are.
This, you mean this, the bottom half?
Yep.
That's when we take out the unassigned fund balance compensated absences. It's kind of left over from Spencer Niebel. He didn't want to see, the compensated absences is the leave accruals, and he wanted to see that omitted from this calculation.
So about 20%, either way you look at it, with it or without it. So we are still meeting within our policy guidelines. And that's a pretty good kind of safety net in case anything major should happen or whatever we need it for, if we should need it. Any questions? You guys are still reading it, so I don't want to rush you guys.
What, next year's number is,
Yeah, I mean, so are you looking at the green column, Don?
yeah, 24 or 13%? What's
Yeah.
the fall there? Is there similar?
I would say budget year 2 wasn't a full exercise in terms of trying to balance it out. So there is a big change there. What it is specifically, I'm not really sure. I don't want to say the second year budget's not, it's not what we focus on. It's not what I focus on when we're going through the budgets, because there's so many variables that can change. Some years it looks really good because it doesn't have any capital that's already budgeted for. So it just, I don't know. I wouldn't focus too much on year 2 for the time being.
I think, I hate to say it, but I think there's a problem with our BSNA export that caused that. If you look on, I mean, you don't have to go there if you don't want to, but it's picking up the wrong ending fund balance. It's not picking up the fund balance that we have in the orange column as the beginning fund balance. So I had a question that I was gonna contact BSNA, but if I use that, it should really be, the beginning fund balance should be 2,837,000 with an extra 300,000. We should be way higher than that. So I pulled these numbers in right from BSNA, but then right after I distributed all this stuff, I was like, that just doesn't seem right. So we'll get it fixed before you approve it. And you can see it on the very bottom of the general fund, the detail you were going through earlier,
yeah.
Brian.
Yep, what page is that?
It's it's probably 20, page 20 on the PDF, maybe? So you see, it, instead of 2,837,000, it pulls over the beginning fund balance of 1,470,000, which is close to where we were in the department requested. That's the department requested level.
Mm-hmm.
And it just isn't pulling over across correctly, so, sorry.
there's no major icebergs that we're not disclosing to you, in short. Sorry,
Another shipwreck analogy.
I had to, I know. So,
Holding our own.
any questions on general fund fund balance moving forward into next year? All right, awesome. Are we still good? Anybody need a potty break or anything? No? All right. I have children. I'm sorry, they're still potties. All right, so we will move into sewer and water fund operations. So for this one, we are going to go into our budget detail. And we're going to go into capital. I gotta pull up the right ones. So we're gonna go into tab C in your book. Excuse me. Bonnie, I'm not gonna try to keep it on the monitor. That's just getting too difficult. Thank you. We'll pull up something if we need it. All right, so we'll go into tab C, sewer and water. The first page we have here is the sewer and water rate summary for fiscal years. Which page do you want us to start on there, Kristen, you think?
I thought we were gonna go through operations first.
That's
The
right.
detail, and then go through the rates, so that the commission and the public can see what we are using to set those rates.
So we're looking at the one from the budget report, correct?
Yes,
All
yes.
right.
And
page is
of the PDF, it should be page 55.
Start on 55. I gotta get to page 5. Hold on. 55. All right. All righty. So, first thing we're looking at sewer and water. We are looking at estimated revenues moving forward for next year. Right. What's that? Oh, the magnifying glass. All right, so Bonnie, you want to throw it back up on the monitor? I'm sorry, I know I just told you off again, but so we're going to start into your budget book on page 55 in the original detail that we're just going through what your general fund was on. If you want to refer to it up here. So at the end of this, there is a proposed rate increase, and we just kind of want to set the table for you all to understand what we're seeing and kind of why we're kind of proposing that. So this first column here, you can see the amount of revenues that we're anticipating for the water and sewer. There's some increases there. Commodity charges are increasing, capital charges we're kind of increasing. In part with the rates that we're looking at, we do have a decrease in usage that we're seeing from the water as well. So the amount of water that we're producing and selling has been decreasing over the last couple of years. I think we had that chart. Do we still have that chart?
2%.
2%.
It's in the water rates.
Yeah. So we're not only seeing an increase in expenditures, but we're also seeing a decrease in the usage. And there could be a variety of different things, more efficient fixtures, appliances, whatever the case may be. So we are seeing a decrease in the actual usage of the water. You kind of see some of the revenue coming in for the interest. That's major there. Sale of equipment. So estimated revenues that we have for water and sewer for next year is about $12 million. Projected activity for this year is about 14 million, so we do see that decrease kind of moving forward there. Moving down into the appropriations, the expenditures, again, there's not a lot of changes in terms of staff. We do have one position that we are unfunding via attrition. We have 2 meter employees right now, water meter employees. And with the meter projects that we're expecting it to be a lot more efficient for staff, and we could probably handle it with one. So there is one position elimination within the water fund. But there's no additions or any other reductions there. Public Works, staff support, you see the expenditures moving across there.
The biggest change might be that accounting and management that we revised.
Yeah. So you see that down in the middle, it's about $153,000 accounting and management. And that is the services provided by my department, finance, some of the service-oriented, internal service-oriented departments. That's the charge for those. So Kristen put some time into it this year to recalculate that expense. And she's got a formula that she came up with, and that was the expense for this particular budget was $153,000. So,
But you see this 200,000 for central service cost allocation going away. So really,
Yeah.
for this fund, it's a savings of 50 grand.
What was central service cost then, the same?
It's basically the same thing. We rolled it into one description. So it's the accounting and management and all the services of the commission, everything that the general fund does to support this fund.
How did it go down then? Is that just?
We spread it among more funds on a different basis. We used basically staff, wages, cost in each fund to roughly estimate the management that is required for that fund.
any questions on that first budget? All right, we'll hop down to the next one, staff support for sewer. No major changes there. Yep. Following budget is the water filtration plant, and that obviously pays for the waste or the water treatment plant and that's staff and the chemicals and the everything that we needed for that one. For the most part, things are straightforward, no major increases. Just double checking line items. Electricity, we're seeing a slight bump in the electricity, gas and heat, building maintenance. Nothing major there. The following budget is the transmission and distribution. That is for the utility crews that are out in the field, putting in new sewer lines, water lines, all that stuff. And again, nothing major there. Going across from year to year, some slight increases. For the most part, things are staying relatively flat. Operating meters, the next budget, that's where you're going to see a little bit of decrease because we're reducing the number of staff members from 2 to 1. So you've got a decrease in salaries and then the associated fringe benefits following underneath of that. Any questions on that budget? Moving down to sewer system. This is the secondary component to the utilities for the sewers. the vac truck, the sewer employees, right? I'm sorry, sewer system, yeah. Yeah. No major increases there, stays pretty static. Following budget, we get into 545, that's the sewage treatment plant. Again, no increases or decreases in the staff numbers there. Salaries for benefits are increasing based on the contracts. You see that MERS DB pension drop up or jump up again from 70 to 106. For the most part, the line items stay pretty straightforward. We do have an increase in some equipment and repair and maintenance, and that's just a safe bet given kind of the condition of some of the stuff down at the plant. We want to make sure we have enough capital to be, or not capital, enough cash to be able to repair what we have to. Question?
No, when we get to the end, we locked in our gas costs, right?
What kind of gas costs?
Natural gas for heat. We did not? I thought we had gone, okay.
We did in years past. It's been quite a few years, but the last couple years of that agreement, it was trending higher than what we would get direct from, say,
Okay.
DTE, so we terminated that agreement.
All right, gotcha.
So not a whole lot of increase to the actual expenses within the wastewater plant for operations. The next budget item is the 546, is the lift stations. I don't remember if we added this in last year during the budget cycle, if this was something new recently, but I know it's newer. This is to track the expenses associated with maintaining the lift stations. We have about 6 out in the field, right, Brian? How many lift stations? 8. We have 8 lift stations out in the field. And typically it's just been absorbed into the wastewater treatment plant budget, but we broke it out to show actual costs for those repairs and maintenance. So for the most part, we've done a lot of capital projects on a handful of them throughout the year. So for the most part, they're running pretty good. But that's just the operations of the lift station. The next one you're gonna get into is the capital outlay. So going through the operations, you can see there's not a lot of major changes to the actual operations in terms of salaries, in terms of utilities, in terms of anything that may lead to a crazy increase. But you get down into the capital a little bit, you start to see where some of the costs are coming in. So equipment punt house, we got about $100,000 there. And we can get into more detail about this once we get into the capital, but you start to see some of the capital costs that we're proposing as we move down that one. And then the next big budget item is the debt payments for all the CSO work and the various improvements to the system. So in total, it looks like next year we've got about $3,184,000 in principal payments that we're making next year. You know, was that? Yeah.
That's all debt service.
Yeah.
Principal and interest.
I wasn't sure if it bled onto the next page, but it's not. So that's all debt service. And we have some of them retiring soon, some of them on there for a little bit longer, but you can see the amount of debt that we've taken on throughout the years for a lot of them is the CSO work, so.
2,000,006 is the reduction in principal.
Yeah, next page, you kind of see some of these transfers out. So there's some extra funds being transferred, but. So any major questions on the operations of the sewer, water, and that system? I lost my sticky note. What did we want to move on to next?
We were gonna do
Kristen?
sewer and water rates, now that
Thank
we
you.
are all so knowledgeable about the operating budget of that fund. And that will be on tab C, starting with rate summary.
No, I don't know what I did with it. Nope. Oh, well. No, I got it. I just had a person wrote me an agenda to stick to, and I can't find the darn thing. All right, so we wanted to jump to water and sewer rates, correct? So we are going to pull up sewer and water rates. Manager recommended. That's going to be in your tab C, page. Is the one that we were looking at on the
It's-
screen? Is that the one we want first, Kristen?
Yep, that's it.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I'm sorry, there's not a page number on it. But it's the first page and column, or in your tab C. So going over the operations, we're getting into the rate structure now. You can see kind of how the rate structure is built out. Some of it's based on the size of the meter. We have a commodity charge that's based on thousands of gallons of use. There's a capital charge, and then the associated sewer rates are kind of the same as well. So moving forward, you kind of see where we've been at in the past and where we're proposing. Some of the bigger meters has a slight decrease to the cost of them, but the commodity charge is what we're increasing, as well as the capital charge. Thank you. And I believe the change in the cost for the meters, how did we get to that again? Remind me.
It was a reduction in cost because Kirk gave me the actual price of
Yeah.
the new meters. And the differential between the larger and the regular household size has shrunk. Whereas we used to have quite a big difference. So all the costs went up for the meters, of course, because we got these brand new meters. But that's why you see that some of the larger meter costs have gone down. Does that help?
Yep. So the commodity charge per 1,000 gallons of water, a little bit of an increase, 7.5%, going from 4.23 back in 1920 to recommended 4.88. Outside is double that rate. Capital charge, there's a recommended increase per 1,000 gallons water again, 5.77 last year to $7.20, $7.20 per 1,000 gallons for next year. Total variable water rate inside the city limits is about $12.08 per 1,000 gallons. Following that, you get into the sewer rates, and again, there's the adjustment for the meters that you see there that we talked about as well. Commodity charge, we got about $5.20, slight decrease there. Capital charge, slight increase from $6.80 per 1,000 gallons to $7.38. And then you see the variable. And kind of what we want to get into would be the next chart, and that kind of shows you what the billings would be based on usage. And I'm just going to zoom this up real quick here. So
Can you maybe back up for general public that's watching and define commodity charge and capital charge as far
Yep.
as why, and so people that know which one is water usage, which one is payment for debt?
So commodity charge is the cost associated with production, correct?
Yes.
And then capital charge is the cost associated with capital. So some debt service, equipment upgrades, purchases in that nature.
Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah.
so hopping down to the next chart here, so we put this chart together to show what a resident or a family may use based on their average usage right now. And I would say these are, as again, your monthly average bills. So last year, if you take 5,000, because it's highlighted blue here, which is probably the average residential one, you're looking at inside the city limits. Sorry, this lost real quick. Last year, this current fiscal year, for 5,000 gallons use, you're looking at about $118 per month. And again, you use less, the dollars are less, so that's our average. Our proposed rate increase would bring that 5,000 up to $130.56 per month, based on an average use there. So it's roughly a 10% increase. Some of the smaller ones that don't use as much water is obviously a smaller rate increase, but that's kind of your average amount that people use, and that's your average amount of an increase. And again, a lot of that increase is going to cover your capital and cover your debt service as well.
And that would be a family of 4.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna need to up my monthly automatic payment on auto pay, is what you're telling me.
Yes. Unless it automatically just hits whatever you're being billed, but yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a steep increase. We are still kind of playing catch up from where we've been in the years prior. We got a lot of good projects that we're coming through on. The rate increase right now will cover the capital projects that we're looking for next year, as well as add to our reserves for the following year. Just for example, one of the bigger projects that we are looking at doing, not next year, but the following year, is the repainting of the 4th Avenue water tower, which is one of the bigger water towers in the city. It's a complete sandblast of the inside and repainting of the inside. It should be done every 25 to 30 years. Every 20, even worse, every 20 years. When was the last time we had it done? We're around 22. And it's something that Eagle would frown very heavily on if they didn't see a plan coming forward to redo it. So we have to prep for that project by building up the reserves a little bit, because that project itself, estimated in today's dollars, is about $700,000. So who knows where it'll be in the next couple of years. But we're going to pay for the capital projects that we have right now, build up the reserve, and then if the rates carry forward to the following year, those dollars that would be for previous capital will go towards that project. So we'll probably have one big project for the water side of things in the next, or in a couple of years. So you won't see a lot there, but between the water tower and a couple of the things at the wastewater treatment plant, we think we'll get to a point where we can kind of, I don't want to say decrease, but slope down the increases, so to say. But we do have a couple of big things that we have to budget for and try to get done. And there are a lot of monies being thrown out there for water and sewer and investments from the state in that nature, but they're not guaranteed. We don't know if we'll be eligible for them. We don't know if the projects will be eligible for them. So we have to move forward in a way that we can cover the projects ourselves. And if we get grant funding, super awesome. Kirk will be the first one to throw the party for us, but we can't count on that kind of lifeline every time we need something. So there is, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. That was one of the things I was going to ask for you to hit on, is that there might be money in the future in the state budget for that. But another thing that was, I was talking with my husband, Steve, before we came over here, and we all know that one of the most misunderstood budgets in the entire city is the water and sewer. And, you know, there are always comments thrown around that, you know, we put money, we increase the water rates so that we can do pet projects or we can do other things. I wonder if there's a way for us to constantly keep trying to educate the public on how the water and sewer is a closed system, how the costs and the fees associated with it are just simply to take care of the system, costs associated with that, and then also costs associated with the amount of water that you use. But I wonder if there's something that we can just do on a regular basis to just constantly kind of drive those thoughts home to people so that these bizarre comments are not always thrown around, how the
Good
commission.
luck with that.
Commission's lining their pockets, and, you know, we all hear all kinds of stuff like that, but,
I mean, we can certainly do more. We can certainly do more to educate the public on specific topics, and I'm sure between the staff that we have and even the resources outside through Kurt's associations, I'm sure we could find a lot of good materials to be able to push that way too. And we can even during commission meetings. I mean, if we just pick a topic a month in managers meeting or in the managers updates or even in the communications section, whatever it is, we can do some of those education pieces too, and that way they're broadcast, they're recorded, people can pick them up whenever they want to, so there is probably an opportunity to do more.
okay, thank you.
I think it's helpful to look at the Sewer and Water Fund as a not-for-profit separate entity. No tax revenues go into the Sewer and Water Fund. It has to operate just like Ray's business, but with only covering costs and allowing for a little bit of that capital improvement. So I think that's always helpful for me when I'm talking with a resident, a customer that you know, is concerned about where is that money going. And it is all maintaining a huge infrastructure. I mean, when you think about all the pipes under the under the roads and the plants operating, and we all want our water to be safe and safe for ourselves to drink, but safe for the environment as well. And those regulations just keep getting hiked up on everyone. And, you know, I'm not saying good or bad, but it does cost.
And those are good comments, and it is a good reminder that this is an enterprise fund, so it is separate and distinct. And so you are saying in summary, I guess, for the 14th time, that your recommended increase in the water rates are due most specifically because of capital charges, which is one component of the rate structure, and it's because we have some projects and deferred projects that we need to have done. And a couple of them were large. We haven't looked at those yet in the budget, but so that people know those are specific projects that are necessary to deliver the water and sewer services to the community.
Yep, and we have an older system, and we have a lot of repairs that we have to do, and certain things we haven't moved on, and I can't speak to why we have or have not, but we've got 2 new directors overseeing different components of the utilities, and we're never short of projects, but there are critical projects that we have to do. We have a list of things that we wish we could do at any given point, but we have things that we have kind of isolated as these are critical components. And if one of them were to fail, there's a severe risk of either, it could be further damage to the plants, it could be damage to, it could be a public health issue. I mean, there's a lot to it, it really is. And we're trying to manage the best we can with what we have. But like I said, there are projects, and we can get into that here in a second, that we have to do to make sure that we are not only proper stewards of the revenues that we bring in and the finances of the residents, but also of the environment and the resource that we use in those 2 plants as well.
One more comment too is, we always say that if we don't do these incremental changes on an annual basis when we do the budget, and we've seen it happen to other municipalities where the commissions refuse to increase the rates, then all of a sudden you get a huge increase, and people notice that a lot more, like 300% increase than they do like a 10% increase. So, you know, it's not fun to do, but we do have to take care of the system, and it's better to do these smaller increases than it is to do large ones to have to try to make up for some lost ground.
So with that note, if there's nothing else on the revenues, the operation, we'll go right into capital, and we can kind of get into some of those projects as well. Tab B. B. Nope, wrong one. Capital equipment and projects. All right, just so we can see on the screen a little bit here. Excuse me. So, 2 columns. Several columns here, but so how we're looking at the sheet here, you see the department on the left side, the type of purchase, or if it's an equipment purchase, or if it's a project, kind of description of what it is, funding source, department requested dollar amount, if there's a grant or a local match required, and then manager recommended. So you'll see some of these projects that were requested by the departments have been cut by myself, and just to round out the budget here. So we'll just kind of take these line by line. First one, the fire department, are the replacements for the SCBA's. SCBA's are their breathing apparatuses. They typically have a cycle there. This year we're budgeting about $18,000. There is a fire engine that needs some refurbishment work. We've cut this one for next year pending further analysis. Basically, this truck is 22 years old, and if we threw $80,000 to $100,000 and it only lasts 2 years, is it really worth it, or should we just start to plan to buy a new one, or whatever the case may be? So we cut that one. There was a request for $50,000 for ambulance cot lifts. That project has been cut. There is a FEMA grant out there. If we get it, we get it. Awesome. If we don't, we're not going to lose anything over it. This is a big one in here, fire station update for co-ed employees. Right now, we have 1 bunk room. Actually, we have several bunk rooms, but it's based on your position. We have 1 general bunk room and 1 bathroom shower room. And there is an increase in the potential for female applicants and employees. And we have to offer equal accommodations. So there's some monies that was projected to be for this project, so we'll put in a separate bathroom, a female bathroom, and we'll kind of quarter off some of the rooms in order to create separate sleeping quarters for female employees. We had $20,000 in here coming from the general fund. We did cut this. We are keeping the project. It just may come through a future request for some of our ARPA funds that we have on there. And ARPA dollars are able to be used for facility upgrades such as this. So we cut it out of the general fund, and we'll move forward with it that way. But it is something that we feel we need to do, given the potential for change in demographics within the fire hall. So 1 purchase of a new mower for the Parks Department, $75,000. It's one of the big mowers that we use. Within the Parks Department, we're also purchasing a mini excavator for the cemetery. That's going to come from the Perpetual Care Fund. We have another mower that's going to come from the Perpetual Care Fund. Moving down to the next one, we have an update to the Parks and Rec Master Plan. This is about $20,000. This is going to come out of the general fund. This is a requirement for any kind of future parks grants that we apply for. They require to have on hand an updated and adopted Parks and Rec Master Plan that shows potential projects that communities are going after, how they plan on funding those projects. So $20,000 will bring in a consultant to do that work for us. The development of the plan is based on state statute and DNR guidelines. It is very time consuming if we did it in-house. I'm sure Robin can tell you from the last time we did it in-house. But $20,000 for a consultant should be able to get it done. So that's a plan that will open up the door for other grant funding opportunities in the future. Going down to the next one, Polar Building engineering study for new concrete ring floor. There's concerns given the age of the floor within the Polar and some of the associated infrastructure. $50,000 going to pay for a consultant to come up and take a look at it. This one's probably not 100%. I wouldn't say this one's 100% going to happen. If we start peeling back a couple layers of the onion and it looks like it doesn't need to happen, then we may be able to just return this funding. But we are concerned about the concrete and the pipes that are in the concrete that line the floor. as they're all original. So they're all, what year is that, 1930? Old. They're all old and original. So we want to make sure that we're prepared for that. There's a couple other requests in here that we did cut, and again, just to kind of frame some of these requests, these two next items for the Polar would be funded by the general fund. The $134,000 for a new condenser cooling tower and $50,000 to build out or rebuild the refrigeration compressors. If you remember from going through the operations for the general fund, there's not a lot of capital in there. There's not a lot of room for capital. So that's $180,000 that is probably going to need to happen in the next couple, 3 years or so. And how we're going to fund it, we have a couple ideas, but we have to be a little bit creative with that one. Next item, the parking deck. Yes, sir.
Sir, I have a question. Of those two, what's the one that cools the ice? Like, which is the one that? There's two there. There's 134,000, the 50,000 arm, but what is the one? Is one of those the chiller out back? That one that makes that squealing sound? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, somebody? Okay, yeah, so,
Compressor inside?
yeah.
All right.
And
Thank you.
Tyler's out sick today, otherwise he would be here, he's probably
Well,
watching this
if he
from
was here, I'd have
TV,
a
but,
couple more questions, but.
and you can ask the questions, I can't guarantee I can answer them right now, but I would be more than happy to follow up with them, if you had them.
I'm good right now.
Okay,
Thanks.
very good.
I just wanted to know which was which, that was all.
Yep. Next one, parking garage gate system. So the current arm basically at the parking garage is a mess and a half. We spend yes, we did, and it's a very bad system. There are constantly issues. Sherilyn is the one that's on call for when the gate goes down. We pay her a lot in comp time because she gets the comp time for being called in. She's getting calls all hours of the night, all throughout the week. The gate, we probably had it up a good number of days throughout the year. The bill thing doesn't work. The arm gets frozen stuck, and I don't mean winter frozen. It just doesn't work. So it's costing us more money than probably, I don't want to say what it's bringing in, but it's a big expense in terms of the money that's required to maintain it and just the cost of the personnel to fix it. It's a big pain in the keister, so we want to replace it. And there will be some form of savings, either in less support calls to the company that we have to call, which is charging us an arm and a leg, or just the lack of comp time being paid out to the employees for managing it. So that is something we're looking to do. We're going to get into some of the water and sewer projects now. And again, you'll see that there was a lot of requests for the departments. We went through and kind of prioritized what ones should be done sooner rather than later. So the first one for the water treatment plant is a chemical pump replacement. It's basically what it sounds like. It's a pump that puts in the chemicals into the process. Switchgear evaluation, raw water pumps, rebuild, and VFD soft start installation. Kirk had a few other projects, but we have zeroed them out for next year. They could be a future year's project, but for water treatment plant, there's those three. I have to go to the next page. Yeah, there's those three projects. For sewer, we are looking to purchase a camera system so that we can check the underground infrastructure. A lot of times right now when we have an issue, we go out there and we don't have eyes. We don't have the ability to look inside it, see if it's a clog, see if it's a drain or a drop tile, whatever the case may do. We spend a good amount of money for a contractor to come in and do it for us. If we just purchase the camera system, Kirk would be super more effective with his staff in trying to diagnose issues throughout the city. And we can use it for a variety of other things too. But next one is a sludge pump replacement. The wastewater treatment plant is $150,000. RBC bearing replacements for $90,000. The RBCs are the rotating bacteria contact units, the big half-circle white humps outside the plant. That's the unit that spins them to keep the organics from eating the materials. If those things start going down, then we're not properly treating the wage or the waste. We could have issues with it going back into it, lose the numbers, all sorts of fun stuff in general, right? Yes. Okay. Thank you, sir. So those are the big projects for those areas. I think we have a couple more coming up and a little bit lower. 3 projects for the IT fund. We haven't gotten into the IT fund, but HVAC controller upgrade, that's for here at City Hall, right? Yeah, you may have noticed sometimes when you come into my office, it's a sauna. Sometimes it's a freezer, so it's not just for my office, but that's part of it. Computer replacement program, we try to do annually, $15,000. I believe your laptops are on the docket to be replaced next year. Not that that matters, but certainly don't want to cut that one. Dragon Speak software, this is software that Chief Beerling is requesting. Basically what it is, instead of the police officers or the detectives, whoever it is, typing their reports, they can speak their reports. It goes into the computer and it does the reports for them. So it makes them more effective. They can do it out in their cars, just makes them a little bit more effective. Stock and equipment, a couple of projects for stock and equipment. We have a single axle plow truck with a wing that Tyler would like to purchase, $250,000. Hot box trailer, $35,000. He was hoping for a sweeper, as his predecessors were also for the last couple of years, but we just couldn't afford that one next year. And having an extra plow truck, or having a new plow truck and an extra hot box trailer would serve us a good deal moving forward. Any questions so far? Getting into one of our more expensive departments, engineering. We have the Water Street CSO project that we've discussed with the commission at previous meetings. It's a $1.2 million project. We're hoping that this will be the last big CSO ticket item. To fund it, we are looking at a Eagle loan through the state, and we did receive word from the Army Corps of Engineers that the funding has been appropriated, and we should have a memo of something within the next couple of weeks. Memo of understanding that we're going to understand we're getting the money. So, yep, $855,000. So we're hoping that's the last big CSO project. Next project, we have Meridian Street, Easter Day Avenue, West 4th. We talked about that project at a previous commission meeting. It's a $1.5 or $2.2 million project. There's some funding coming in from outside the organization. We have a total local match of $1.52 million. This is a combination of road funding, but also utility funding, so out of the sewer and water rates. The Meridian Street Easter Day reconstruction is a road construction, but there's also the underground utilities that we're going to be replacing as well at the same time. So we have our equipment purchases that we've discussed that goes into those rates, but this is also a big one too. This will knock down the reserves a good amount. And again, it's a reconstruct water, sewer, storm sewer, and the roadway. So it's 2.2, 1.5 million from us and various funds, and 750,000 from the state.
The total from sewer and water fund reserves is 733,500, and then 789,000 is coming from, for the road portion, and that we're suggesting comes from road contingency and gaming together.
Yep. So a few different pots of funds for the local match there. The next one, bridge preventative maintenance, that's coming out of the road contingency fund. That's $50,000. That's just for preventative maintenance work on the 7 bridges that we have. Sidewalk replacement program, $55,000. Getting more into the projects for the wastewater, or for the water treatment plant, and one for the wastewater treatment plant. First project is the next phase of the filter rehabilitation. That's $175,000 we're looking at doing. We've been doing that the last year or so, and this will be the last big push for them, right? Yes, that'll be the last big push. He did have a couple of projects on here for CIPP lining. We discussed this at the last commission meeting as well. We're not gonna be able to fund this one with our reserves or the revenues coming in. I think we are incorporating it into the CDBG fund that we're seeking out in the next couple of weeks. You have a public hearing on that one, but that was something that was on our radar as well, that we're seeking other funding for. Riverside Drive Main Rehabilitation. That is also being rolled into the CDBG grant that we discussed with the commission the last meeting. Hopefully that one goes through. And again, that's a big project, $1.6 million, and that's just the water utility and really nothing else with that. And again, the issue with that one is there's not a lot of water pressure that goes along Riverside there. Next one is the water treatment plant, old pump house demolition. We've got that scratched for $125,000. The facility, the former facility, is in really bad shape. I know there's been some questions and comments about trying to salvage or rehab that facility. It's our perspective that it can't be done unless there's an unlimited amount of money to do it. We do have some pictures we can show you if anybody's interested to see it. We can even do a walk around if you would be curious to see it, but it's a hazard. We have teenagers that frequently break in there. I think we had 2 groups in the last summer that we hauled out of there, the police department, and it just needs to come down, in our opinion. So we got $125,000 scheduled for that one.
I'm gonna hit it.
Huh?
I'd like to hit that.
Hit that?
Yeah, just so at least we can talk about it. I'd like to hit that.
So I wanted to discuss that too, just to keep our record perfect on the hits. You're gonna come back with just more research, but what we really wanna do is we wanna do the walk around, we wanna see more information. So that'll come when the item comes before us, probably. I mean, the hit's not gonna make any difference, right?
Well,
To
unless
leave it in the budget and
So
if
the
it
hit,
fit.
the hit right now,
If we hit it and we take it out of the budget.
that's
then-
right, if you hit it right now and you take it out of the budget, then I don't move forward with that project,
Period, yeah.
period.
But you're not gonna move forward until we approve it anyway.
Well, I can't move
You're
forward
gonna
until,
research it, yeah.
correct. So,
So is it wasteful to hit it? Or do we wait for it to come to us?
I think that's a you decision.
Yeah, it's up to you.
Okay, I'd like to,
I would suggest that we do not hit it and we wait for it to come to us. And let me also say, and I'm sure that building hasn't gotten any better in the past 8 years, and it's got asbestos issues in the basement. I mean, when I was looking at developing that building, the engineers told me that, you know, put it this way, the only way anybody could develop that building is that if you want to lose money. You know what I mean? You are, you know, sure, I mean, I guess you could wish and hope that some magic grant is gonna present itself someday, but meanwhile, that building is deteriorating as we speak, that kids break into it every year, and they leave their mark behind, so you know they've been there, even if the police aren't dragging them out. They light fires in there. You know, it's only a matter of time before somebody builds a fire in there and the whole place goes up.
the reason for my hit isn't necessarily sitting on pins and needles waiting for a developer to come along. It was mostly because of just such a tight budget right now, with $2,000 really sitting out there as a positive part of the budget. Maybe $125,000 isn't necessary this fiscal year.
But what I'm saying, though, is that we don't necessarily have to approve that until it comes to us anyway. So I would rather leave it on and give us the option down the road.
And this,
I think I agree with that. I have questions and concerns about this item too. And I think there's, you know, you have to sell this a little bit more. I'd like to see it and I'd like to talk about it more, but I think if we take it out, then it's off the table and I'd rather see it stay.
Have us talk about it more? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Maybe just be warned, it's gonna be an item of contention and don't proceed until we have discussions about it first.
and we'll, we'll schedule a walkthrough with any of the commissioners that want to see it firsthand.
Wear a hard hat.
Where,
Well, and really, again, it's not because I think that it's a potential developable property. I'm just concerned about such a tight budget right now, and maybe $125,000 for the demo on it isn't so pressing that maybe we can put that towards another CIP. That
And
was
I-
the only reason. But we can leave it in there, and then we'll talk about it when the whole item comes to us.
Yeah, I did a walk around in this building last week. It's bad. You know, I walked all the way around it, you know, granted, I did not go inside at this time, but the inside looks as half as bad as the outside looks. It's well beyond its life expectancy, and it's pretty much time to go at this point, in my opinion. Like I said, I did a walk around last week.
And
Hey.
Certainly when the item comes forward, you can hit it at that time, too.
oh, she's back. And I just.
That was quick.
Babies are quick, aren't they? I just want to make it clear too, I'm not sure if I heard you right, Commissioner Twardy. The funding source for the water treatment for this demolition is coming out of the Water Capital Reserve.
I was not aware of that. Okay,
Yeah, it's not, this isn't a general fund
okay.
project, this is coming out of water fund.
Okay, all right, so we'll just leave it in there, and then we'll talk about it and when it comes to us then.
So it should be removed from the suggestions list.
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
Is the water tower painting not in here?
So the water tower painting, I should probably lean in. Water tower painting is not next fiscal year, it's following fiscal year.
Gotcha.
So there are reserves being built up a little bit to help fund that the following year. Yes. I just got two more projects. Security upgrades, we cut that one. That is something we're gonna do probably 5 years out or so. It'd been nice to do now, but there's some changes to the security that we're gonna have to do around there. And last but certainly not least, one project for the wastewater treatment plant is $30,000. What we're gonna do is we are going to hire a consultant to come in and kind of take the next step from the SAW grant / prepare us for any kind of potential loan that we have to do to upgrade the plant. So the plant itself has got decent bones in terms of an actual facility, but the mechanics, the processes, all that stuff need to be upgraded. So the SAW grant the city completed a few years ago got us to the point that said, the plant is an issue, the plant has issues, here are some general recommendations. What this $30,000 is gonna do is gonna bring a consultant in, go through certain phases of the wastewater treatment plant, identify the process, identify all the alternatives, and then propose what we should do moving forward. And in part, that'll serve staff and I as a point for more rounded discussions in terms of what we should be doing. But if we apply for anything through Eagle for the wastewater treatment plant, they're gonna ask for that analysis anyways. So while we're asking for that analysis, and we know Eagle's gonna ask for that analysis, we might as well have somebody do it now so we can plan better. And what is it gonna look like? We don't know yet. I mean, Brian's got a lot of ideas for different things throughout that process within the plant, but maybe they're cost effective, maybe they're not. So that's what that's gonna help us do. It's gonna help us take the next step in managing the plant, but also preparing for any kind of upgrades that we have to do moving forward.
Thought we got a check from the state rep before we let him out of that building. No way. He didn't go for it?
We wish. So, that's the capital projects for the next year in summary. I mean, I think it's, about $6.5 million, it looks like, in projects and equipment purchases that we're looking at doing, so. A lot of work, but that kind of gives the rounded out picture on why some of the increases, the sewer and water rates. Probably have to go get coffee. Any questions on capitals? Yes, sir.
Actually, Commissioner Twardy reminded me of something. Where's the, for the Polar project, the hood vent? And thank you, Commissioner Twardy, for reminding me of that. I was looking, I didn't see it.
That project's already budgeted and been approved, so this would be projected for next year. So that's why it's not on there.
That's gonna happen this fiscal year, hopefully, or
before opening
In August.
in August. But that's why it's not on here, because these are future projects. That's an existing project. Yep.
Okay.
So we already, I think it was 90,000 committed for that one. For the hood.
90 or 60?
We upped it to 90,
Oh, okay.
I believe we did.
But it still hasn't come to us for approval yet.
It's out in bids right now.
Okay.
We had not to get off topic, we had the bids out, bids are out right now. There was a scheduled walkthrough to show whoever was interested in it. Tyler sent it out to local contractors, faraway contractors, anybody and anybody with the name heating and venting or anything like that. And they had one group pass by. So we'll see. And that's what our hope is, to get it done by the end of the summer, but we're gonna need a contractor to do it. And if there's no contractors coming forward, then I don't know what we're gonna do. I certainly can't put one of those things up, so. So we'll see. Maybe there's somebody that will come through.
I just want to make sure it's actively being,
It's as
keeps
actively
going.
being pursued as we can.
okay, thank
Yep.
you.
And we'll
Ryan?
bring that, I'm sorry.
When we were talking about that wastewater treatment plant upgrade estimate, that last project, it reminded me of, in the sewer and water rates, at the back of that, there was the thing that, I think that was prompting the conversation about it being a tiny font. There's that debt service coverage ratio worksheet, and I'm not sure if anybody is concerned about that, but that is our long-term projections of the entire, till 2036, for all the debt that we have right on. And that will come in handy when this study comes back and we're looking at adding a load of debt onto the fund. And so at the very bottom of it, there's a little bit of pink in the bottom. If you scroll down to the very bottom of that page, those pink sections, those are the kind of the warning years that are saying, hey, we're below our debt service coverage ratio of 1.05. So it's just kind of showing that we're making progress in paying off our loans. And when we do get ready to add a major upgrade to the wastewater treatment plant or any of these other capital items that we've been talking about longer term that are large enough to bond, that's what we'll pull out and we'll share with the commission. But I thought it'd be worth including in the packet, just in case anybody out there is wondering, do we even monitor this stuff? And then when we do go to it for a bond, they do care about this. Where are we at? Do we look at it every year? So that, we're sharing that with you just so that you know we are, but I don't expect you to kind of like get your magnifier glass out. If you want it on 4 or 5 pieces of paper, you can, but I included it in the packet just so you'd have it.
Yep. So we've moved kind of through the bigger items per se, the general fund, sewer and water rates, the capital. Are there any questions or any comments? Not saying you have to have any, but is everybody comfortable where they're sitting right now? As comfortable as you're gonna be, right? I have to go to the bathroom, so I'm not that comfortable.
Want to take a 5-minute break? That'd be great. Okay. At 6:10, we'll reconvene at 6:15.
Perfect.
So the one question you want. All right, and we're back. So we're continuing on. Just for the person that texted me today, I just wanted to say I asked the city manager about the parks maintenance budget. He had asked why it was $180,000 less. And it's primarily in payroll costs because the higher paid ranked personnel had moved to other departments, and there were lesser paid people there, so it's mostly payroll. Correct? Okay.
Can I
All right,
ask, what
just
page, what
because
page
he's
is that on?
probably watching. I think it was on,
Oh, it's under parks, okay.
I had
Yeah.
a note for myself to look at that, because it is a startling
the 180, okay.
And so I was hopeful there wasn't an error.
Yeah, there's been a couple changes. And
Okay,
Yeah, because Dan's not in there anymore. Dan was a part of that. Tyler's fully charged
Okay.
to stock and equipment.
good point.
So there's a couple of things there. But
Mostly due to personnel changes and-
Yes.
and not
Yeah.
lessening the delivery of services.
and we haven't cut staff, correct?
Okay. Thanks.
Alrighty. Where are we at? So I'm gonna just kind of chip away at the bigger stuff, and then we'll get to the smaller stuff. So I'm gonna skip over the trust funds really quick, and maybe we'll come back to them if you guys want to. There's not a lot there. So we'll hop into 202 Major Street Fund on page 27. Excuse me. Probably shouldn't have done that in the mic. All right, 202 is our Major Street Fund. Revenues, you can see, we are expecting an increase in revenues. Projected activity for this year is about 1.7 million. We're looking at 1.8 million next year. I believe the Major Street Fund's got a little bit more of a healthier reserve to it as well. But you can see, so slight increase there. Expense-wise, for the most part, some things are staying the same. Again, there's some increases due to the contractual wage increase from the bargaining units, the associated increases with the fringes there. Some little minor things going across the board there, but really nothing. The equipment rental is what gets paid out to the Stock and Equipment. Stock and Equipment buys the piece of equipment, and then it's rented out to the major streets and the subsequent local streets and the other budgets that we have moving forward too. So that's what that big dollar amount is there, that 595,000. There is a transfer out to local. Major is supporting the local in the amount of 285,000 as well. Any major questions there? And again, oops, go ahead.
go ahead.
Sorry. Nope.
Can we just outline a little bit, if anybody's watching or will rewatch this, that these are the major local streets, this is the maintenance
Yeah,
and all, but where does that money come from? Maybe itemize the
Yep.
5 areas up above. It is not your property tax revenue.
No, so major streets is major and local streets is a classification of roads throughout the city. Major streets are the more heavier traveled ones. I don't have the map that I could show you with them, but this fund pays for the staff and the maintenance activities associated with anything on the major streets. So potholes, crack sealing, it could be mowing the right of way, certain maintenance activities such as that. This isn't driven by your property taxes here locally. There's State Act 51 funds that come from the state. A lot of that is fuel tax. Fuel tax that you pay at the pump goes to the state and it gets distributed in that manner. So we've got State Act, or we got Act 51, Build Michigan funds, trunk line maintenance, that's for the business spur that comes in there, gas weight tax, snow subsidy to help with snow plowing. And then we have some Metro funds, which is the right-of-way. It used to be called the right-of-way impact fees. The state took over those funds, called it something else, so it's a little bit extra revenue coming in there. So what funds the major streets in terms of maintenance activities aren't necessarily tax dollars.
And does not provide enough money to fix all the roads that we need fixed.
Correct, and if you look at, I mean, the revenues for major is 1.8 million, the expenses are 1.7 million. If you even just take a look at the one road that we talked about on Monday during the commission meeting, Lake Shore, just to reconstruct that street, which isn't a major, or it isn't a major, but just in comparison, that whole reconstruction is just $2 million. So I mean, that would be the entire budget. We wouldn't be able to do maintenance activities, not saying that this could go to that project, but you wouldn't be able to do any maintenance activities if you were just doing segments of streets. I mean, that's kind of what we're up against, is revenues are revenues. I mean, 1.8 million is a lot to somebody personally, but when you're talking about the infrastructure, it's just a drop in the water.
And we as a community in no way, shape, or form can impact that money coming in. We can't ask for more. It's all based on formula
Correct.
and
Correct.
based on sales tax from registrations and from fuel.
And the expenses are regulated as well. The expenses have to go to streets that are classified as majors. There can be some shifting that goes towards locals, but we can't redo a park with this fund. We can't redo a marina or the Polar or anything like that. It has to stay for these purposes.
And when we looked at the general fund, we had a revenue excess of $2,000, which wouldn't buy a bucket of gravel to put into any of the street holes.
We could,
So it's very difficult to come up with funding for repair of the streets. It takes creativity, it takes time, it takes grant sources, it takes,
Correct.
you know, possible loan sources, but some way, shape, or form, the residents will have to unfortunately pay for it, or we will have to figure out a way to get money from other sources.
correct.
To add to that, if you scroll down to the local street, I know you're not there yet, Brian, but that's the impoverished one.
Yeah.
And a lot of our worst roads, we know, are our local roads. So those are the ones that need the major work, and it makes it even harder. The major street actually could probably support a small reconstruction, but the local street, if you look at that fund balance, it's less than 300,000, and that's with major street support.
Yep. So fund balance for major streets, we went through the revenues, expenditures, fund balance, per our report here, ending fund balance for next fiscal year is about 1.7 million. So like, Director Collins said, there's probably some room for a project, or even if we wanted to use it for grant matches for bigger projects on majors, we have that funding there. But if there's no other questions on majors, we'll hop into locals, kind of as a segue. It's your following page. Any major questions? Any major questions on major roads? All right, we'll see if there's any local questions for local streets. So local streets, as Director Collins is saying, it's a smaller budget. There are unfortunately more of these classifications of streets or roads throughout the city. Revenues are anticipated coming in about 964,000. Projected activity for this year is about 635,000. So there is an increase in funding, and that's primarily coming in from the transfer in for the major streets at $285,000. So there is a transfer coming into there. If you're looking at expenditures, and again, this pays for staff time, materials, and expenses associated with maintaining local streets and the associated infrastructure. No major changes there. Wages are increasing based on any kind of contractual increase. And everything else is kind of static moving forward there. We do have some work budgeted in there for pavement markings. We discussed that at the commission meeting last week. Some guardrail improvements we're still moving forward with there. And again, equipment rental, that's the payback to the stock and equipment for any equipment that's used on the local streets. Just kind of digging down at the end there, as we were just discussing, the fund balance projected at the end of fiscal year is going to be about 287,000. So certainly not a lot of money by any means.
That calculation that you mentioned too is negatively impacted slightly by our decrease in population from the census.
All right, rolling into the next budget. Kristen, what was 661 again?
Stock and equipment,
Oh.
and that would be on page 65.
65. So if you want to hop to
Can I-
page 60.
Can I jump back just for a second?
Yes, sir.
Big source of our road revenue is gaming compact revenue.
Correct.
Has there been any indication from the tribe? They received about $300 million in COVID relief money. Is there any intention on helping out the city with some of the roads?
So the tribe is pursuing several road projects. They are themselves. They are communicating with our engineering department because it'll be our roads under our jurisdiction. So there is some collaboration happening there.
With that, they're seeking other money though, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
In part, yes. And I don't know the full details of all of their funding they've gotten, but they do have projects on the books they're trying to do. They're working with engineering. I'm not sure of what their particular funding source is.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. All right, if you skip down to page 65 really quick, this is kind of one of the last bigger budgets. So this is 661, budget 661. This is stock and equipment, and this is the kind of catch-all for public works. This is the fund that would purchase the equipment. If a staff member is not on a local or a major road or doing a task that's billed out somewhere else, this is where they would fall under. So we call that, was it yard work, basically? Yeah, yard work around the DPW facility. It's a big budget. Like I said, it's the one that pays for all the equipment. There is some debt associated with it. The payments come in from the other funds using the equipment and then is rented out and earns income in that way. So overall revenue is about $2.3 million. There's a transfer, as we discussed before, a transfer of $350,000 coming in from the general fund to kind of balance it out. There's a transfer in from perpetual care, $115,000. That'll pay for some of the equipment that the cemetery is looking to purchase for. Building rental, $55,000. Equipment rentals, big one, $1.3 million. And then charges for services and charges or supplies, materials. So overall revenues, $2.3 million. Again, getting down into the operating expenses, there are staff wages associated with this budget. Any kind of increase is based on contractual increases and or projected time spent within that particular area, the yard work. With Tyler being on board as the DPS director, he's getting the crews out and about more on the streets and being billed out elsewhere. So we may see this budget change and hopefully may not need as big of a subsidy from the general fund, but the way we budget is just the way we felt safe that we should move forward with. So again, for the most part, not a lot of major increases across the board. Capital outlay, there's some capital outlay in there, $365,000. We already went over some of that stuff, so. Any, excuse me. Any questions?
Depreciation expense, we usually don't put a non-cash item in the budget, do we, or do we always add that in?
We got dinged a couple times by not budgeting for expenses, and depreciation will hit right at fiscal year end. And I don't want to turn anything into the state that doesn't have a budget behind it. So I started budgeting those a few years ago. It will be there at the end of the year, so it's a non-cash, but it's
I mean, it's
still an
non-cash, so-
expense.
Where does that offset go then?
It's, the other side of it is our, it's a balance sheet item, and it would be
Yeah.
accumulated depreciation. So,
Okay.
you're right, it's not like we're spending the money. It's an accounting entry, but I think the budget should be there. The other one that's similar to that it is cash going out, but it's a reduction of debt is when we have principal payments, not in this fund. But that's another thing that will disappear and as an accounting entry, but I feel like a budget's important to have, just to guide us and make sure we're on track.
And that's even with the water and sewer utility budgets, there's a large depreciation expense built into it. But when we do the rates and we look at the actual expenses, we don't necessarily include the massive depreciation expense.
It's similar to that GASB expense that we did actually get reported to the state for the DDA, because those downtown TIFAs are guaranteeing the debt obligation. I know it's kind of accounting talk, but we got reported to the state for not having sufficient budget for those, and they're not a cash entry.
Good questions. Any other questions? All right, so we are going to start hopping in through some kind of smaller budgets here. Why don't we just continue on with the next page? They have stock and equipment. The next few pages here are just smaller budgets, so we'll just kind of get into them quick. And again, if you have any questions or comments or discussion you want to have, just stop me and we'll go into it. So on page, it looks like 68, but I have a hole in it. 68 is the Employee Health Care Insurance Fund, Fund 679. This is the fund that pays for employee health insurance. We're self-funded. We're a self-funded insurance program, so we kind of act as our own health insurance company. We have all those things contracted out, but we budget and manage the health insurance fund in that manner. So you can see that there's some revenues that come in here from employer contributions, employee contributions, retiree contributions, and then you can kind of get down into the appropriations or the expenditures, and you can see kind of the various claims or programs that we have that pays for this fund. So everything from prescription drug claims, dental claims, vision claims, stop loss credits, admin services, everything is kind of all there. So we are kind of our own health insurance company. There's pros and cons to that. I think we had that discussion shortly after I first got up here because we were looking at the rate structure, and there was a couple of different options, and one was to go to a Blue Cross Blue Shield or stay self-funded, and we ended up opting to stay self-funded because we more or less we can control our own destiny this way. I mean, there's, like I said, there's benefits to both sides, but when you have a self-funded program, you can have a greater impact on your expenses than just being part of a giant pool of people. So, any questions there?
But the stop loss limits are catastrophic
Correct.
coverage,
Yes. The dollar amount's not catastrophic, but what stop loss does is catastrophic, yes. Yep, so it would, was it anything over 75,000, stop loss picks it up. And that's a once a year thing? Yeah, yep. And we just, what did we do? Never mind, sorry. I had a thought, but it wasn't related to this. Any questions on that? We'll scroll into the next one. Police fire pension. Police fire pension was this morning, and I believe from what I've heard, we're not anticipating having to up the millage on that one.
Correct.
Correct. So a little bit of a positive thing there for us. Again, you can see the revenues and the expenditures for this related pension. Police and fire pension, as you know by the name, is only for police and fire employees. All other employees, whether they're unionized or non-union, are in the MERS program, either the defined benefit or the hybrid program that the city offers. So those components are often a separate budgets throughout the budget document, but this is specifically to the police and fire pension. Any questions or comments, or Kristen, any comments from your end on this?
For the MERS, because we are participating and not in control of it, we don't have to have a trust fund, in
Yeah.
case you were wondering.
And this particular program is set up by state statute?
Yeah, Act 345.
Yeah, yep. Any questions? Comments? Issues? All right, we'll go over to the next page there, 72, Fund 736, Post-Employment Healthcare. Again, that's the fund for post-employment healthcare for the various bargaining units. You can see the contributions coming in as revenues. Next year's about $207,000. Anticipated expenditures, next year's about $250,000. But there is a fund balance that would draw off of that, so. And that includes public safety, fire, and public works. Questions? Comments?
Maybe worth noting that these were plans that were negotiated in contracts
Decades.
to keep from having retirement health care coverage for labor employees. So it saved the city lots of money and provides a benefit for them.
All right, so that's the last of that section of the book. So if you want to skip up to, it looks like page 20. I think it's on page 21, but it's page 20. Yeah, 20 is the end of the fund, general fund. So you go to page 21, we'll pick up some of these smaller budgets. I think we got a couple trust funds. And I'm just going to mark a note here. We're gonna go
It
to that
starts with the trust operating funds, and just to give a brief explanation while Brian's finding his spot, the operating is where we spend the money, and the trusts are where we earn the money to spend. So it's all set up like that, and the trust board just determines how much to transfer over and tries to invest it wisely. The operating funds is where this board would designate it for special projects. And then there's the Osborne is historic in nature, and the SEAL is recreational. So Osborne operating is the one where it funded those historic homes that was mentioned earlier.
Yes. All right, so we are on page 21. We got about 30 more pages to roll through. So, Fund 105, steel operating. Not a lot there. And Kristen kind of gave a good description and explanation of it. Any questions on steel operating fund?
I know we mention it every time, but Kristen, you want to just give a real quick recap of, because of the investment returns that will change, how those will be diminished in future years?
So many years ago, the trustees invested in some T-bills, T-bonds is what we've been calling them, T-bills, but they're treasury notes that were paying a great return. What is it, between 6 and 8% for the two of them combined. And those rates we just don't see anymore. So the market rate of those really went very high, but we gain interest revenue of about 60,000 plus each year from those. They will mature in 2023 and 2024. So that's when we're gonna see a drop in that revenue coming in for the recreation. And so the trustees will try, but they're probably not going to match those rates of return. So we will see a drop-off in the spendable proceeds in that Fund 105 as a result.
Significant.
Yep. Alrighty, so that was SEAL operating. Moving on to Osborne Trust operating. Any questions or comments there? Again, the transfer out for Osborne is going to the historical homes, yes, yep. Next page, page 24, is perpetual care. This is the funds that come in from selling the cemetery lots. It's supposed to be a trust fund that pays for the ongoing future maintenance of the cemetery. Traditionally, these have usually never really supported all of the maintenance activities, so we use it to purchase equipment and some services for the cemetery. So there's a transfer out of second equipment, kind of what we discussed before. There's two purchases for the cemetery, the mower and thank you, this thing, because I watch Bob the Builder. It's a technical term, Kathy. I learned that in my MPA class. All right, that's perpetual care. Is there any questions on that one? All right, Seal Estate Trust on 25. See the interest earnings. A little bit of the appropriations there, nothing major there. If there's not any questions, we'll flip over to Osborne Trust. And I talked about that a little bit already as well. If there's not any questions there, we'll kind of skip. Next one is Major Street. We already discussed that. Did we do gaming compact? Yes, we did. Yeah, all right, so we go to page 32, Brownfield tax capture. Budget's pretty straightforward. Very little capture, if any, and a few expenditures, if they happen next year, mostly around environmental assessments. So not too much in that budget. There is a fund balance. I would assume they're possibly anticipating doing at least one environmental assessment, maybe two, given the dollar amount. So small budget, not a lot coming in, not a lot being spent.
Brian, this fund would be a place where we could charge out the demos that we cut out of community development operating.
Yeah, yep.
If the commission saw, if there was some demo that would be necessary.
Yep. There's some fund balance there, some things we could do with it, but we don't have anything really programmed in there for now, so. Any questions there? All right, excuse me. Page 33, Fund 244, EDC Fund. This was the staff proposed budget that came to staff and I. You can see an outline of their revenues, their anticipated revenues, followed by some of their expenses. We don't have a lot of detail on these. There wasn't a lot of detail that was given to us with it, so it's kind of a high-level look at their revenues and expenses. Any questions on that one for now? All right. TIFA 1 and TIFA 2. And Kristen, you gotta remind me what TIFA 1 does.
TIFA 1 is the tax capture of that district, part of the downtown. And so it's the tax revenue for millages captured of just the gain, just the increase in taxable value from a set date. So the millages captured are all the city millages, and then there's a few county millages that are captured as well. So most of it is just reallocating money that would have come into the general fund into these funds. And it's for downtown development. And the main point, from what I understand, is to increase taxable values of the future of those, that's what the funds should be used for.
So, we have Tifa one here with the revenues, with the estimated proceeds that'll be coming in, roughly 186,000. Right, 186,000, yeah. Estimated revenue is 186,000. I see the detail of the appropriations out there. There's a transfer out of those revenues out to additional debt service. Yes, ma'am.
How is the elimination of the PPT going to affect the tax capture, do you think, in TIFA 1 and TIFA 2?
Right now, the taxable value gain, the capture on personal property is negative.
Okay.
So if somehow we were able to eliminate that from the capture district, it would be a big gain. But I don't know that that's happening. I think that we have to carry that personal property value that was there in the 80s and what's there now, which is almost zero. And we have to keep carrying that until the date, until the capture is done.
Oh, I was, okay, that's interesting. I was asking about on small business owners, on business owners in general. I believe that the PPT was eliminated.
The exemption grew from
Oh,
90 to
that's right.
100, or 60 to 180?
Yeah,
Or
that's right. The exemption
that,
grew.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
There's-
it's hard to say. That question was asked to Tina when it first started discussed. It was quite a bit of money that we would lose out of that, but I don't remember if we broke it down to what specific areas
Okay.
within it would be, but it was a good amount of money that we'd be losing from that.
Okay. Thank you.
So that's TIFA 1. Any questions on TIFA 1? TIFA 2, same kind of concept. Money comes in from tax capture. This one has a large transfer that goes out to the parking deck debt. It is kind of hard to say. Any major questions there? TIFA 3 is the same thing, tax capture. This one is up on the hill around the airport. You can see the tax captures and the revenues coming in there, about 198,000. There's some expenses put in there. There's a transfer out to the EDC, transfer out to the LDFA. Not a lot of capital projects by any means, so. In, Kristen, the transfer out to the EDC, what does that pay for? Is that EDC operations,
I don't know.
allegedly?
I
Okay.
believe, I believe that's what, yeah, it's been a long time that it's been doing this, and I think it's for the management of it, but I don't have that information.
Okay, very good. That's what I needed. All right, any questions on TIFA 3, Mr. Mayor?
Transfer out LDFA then would be the same type of, I know the LDFA supports financially the smart zone, but that typically goes right to the EDC then, correct?
TIFA 3 is the guarantor, the backup plan for the LDFA's debt. The LDFA for that building borrowed $900,000, and so TIFA 3 supports that debt if LDFA capture is not sufficient to pay each year's
Oh, okay.
debt service.
So that's the,
That's what that is, yeah. And it actually, LDFA next year, we're budgeting doing quite well. We'll get there next, I believe.
okay,
All righty.
cool.
Any other questions? We'll move on to page 41. 41 is the DDA fund. This is obviously the revenues and expenditures associated with the, am I looking at this right? Yeah, for the Downtown Development Authority. You see the series of revenues they're projecting involves MEDC match on grants, appropriation from the city. You can see that we did reduce from their original request, and again, just to help balance out their budget with what we can. We didn't have a lot of extra room in order to fund some of the requests that Mr. Cutler was looking for. Charges for services, so sidewalk plow business contribution, just as an FYI, the sidewalk contract program that downtown is typically administered, the expenses of that are gonna be doubling next year. That contract is up now, and Tyler had a discussion with the contractor, and the contract's gonna jump from $30,000 to $60,000. And it's not necessarily it could be something the commission has to weigh in on. It's something Tyler's trying to research, work with Tony Cutler on how best to fund that program. It wasn't always the best ran program, so expense side of that is going up, so we have to figure that out. You can see some of the other ones. There's some event income that's coming in, music in the park donations, and the PSD special assessment that's on there as well. So total estimated revenue is about $267,000. Hopping down in the next section, you can see kind of the breakout on the expenses for the different activities, promotions, events, downtown
Quick
dollars.
question in regards to the music in the park donations, because I see that that number is up, what I would call significantly. How do we account for that?
I'm trying to find it.
Post-COVID, I think Tony was talking about having a better year this year without the delays and cancellations of COVID.
See, for one thing, the schedule is shorter than it used to be. I mean, they used to run 12 weeks and now they're running 8. So how they're gonna pull 20,000, I mean, maybe if there's a group out there like the Hudson Foundation that's, donating more than they used to or something like that, but I just don't see it because the program is 4 weeks shorter than it used to be. And I don't think they were pulling 20,000 before, so I don't know how they would expect to pull 20,000 now.
Yeah, and we can relay that information to
And I
Tony.
know that's just a little, I know that's nitpicky in the grand scheme of things, but it sticks out to me.
Yeah, no. Are there any other questions on the DDA budget?
So the PSD is what we were talking about last night, the renewal, so that would
Yes, sir.
significantly impact their budget,
Yes, sir.
or significantly impact the contribution the city would have to make from the general fund to support the downtown,
That's how you want to.
if that's how it would happen, yeah,
Yeah.
so, right.
Alrighty, any other questions on the DDA? Hop to the next one, page 43, the LDFA Smart Zone Fund. Again, this is the LDFA Smart Zone that Director Collins was mentioning that oversees the, or helps fund the building, the Smart Zone Incubator area. You can see the LDFA tax proceeds that are coming in. There's budgeted tax refund that does typically happen. There's a gatekeeper grant that comes in through the MEDC. I believe that one's still possibly coming through there. Some interest earnings and some transfers in from TIFA 3. So the gatekeeper grant does get passed through to the EDC for management type activities for the smart zone. Excuse me. And then you see the transfer out for the debt service on the building.
I have a hit. I see we show the transfer in from TIFA 3, but I don't think it's needed. So I think that 35,000 coming in from TIFA 3 could be reduced to 0 this year, because when I look at the bottom, I see the net revenue is 59.5, And that was just because our tax estimates came in later than those transfers were entered. So my apologies, but I think that's an error to correct. Would that be okay to put that in our list?
What list? Creating a spreadsheet.
And we won't. That's not nothing that we have to have our Monday meeting on. We can just internally, we'll take care of that, and then we'll have it for the final copy. Any questions there?
It's your first one, though. Usually there's a couple adjustments.
I know, it's the first one I've found.
You good?
Alrighty, going on to page 45, special revenue, other special revenue, 253. Special revenues that come in, you can kind of see we have our ARPA COVID relief funds that's sitting there, $1.4 million. There's some grant funding that comes in from PA 302, or 302, land sale proceeds, and how would you describe this, Kristen? It's not necessarily a pass-through, but it's just an accounting of special revenues that come in.
Yes, they're all designated by an outside source. So when they come in, we do not, most of them, we don't really have the authority to spend on something else. There are some that are only by commission action.
Yeah. So not a lot to it. The $1 amount is certainly high, but in terms of the mechanics of it, not a lot to it. You want to jump down to page 46, debt service fund. Again, this kind of shows you the debt that we're dealing with in certain areas over the next couple of years. You have the un-Osborne facility, MTF, City Hall, LDFA. The associated transfer ins from the funding sources to pay them.
This fund just houses only governmental debt, so all the enterprise funds keep their own debt. This one just does everything else, street funds and this building, parks.
To who? And that to Tim. He's coughing. Tips. Those are. All right. Any questions on there? Debt service. We're getting near the end. I feel it. All right. Go to page 48. The next page, 514 parking. So this is the on-street and off-street parking lot parking. This is not the parking structure. So you can see the revenues that we're projecting and bringing in there with the associated expenditures. This budget does pay for one part-time parking enforcement officer. We do have budgeted an extra part-time seasonal worker. We had that last year as well, but it just fell through because the person said they wanted to do it, just couldn't do it, and then we weren't able to secure anybody else. So we have Sherilyn's wages in there. We do have one part-time person to help with the summer.
Brian,
Yes, ma'am.
I think that might be Mr. Killips. Where he maintains the meters
Oh, is
and
he
then
part? Is
does
that
some of the collections.
he's part-time?
Yeah.
Part-time seasonal. All right. Salaries. So salaries is Sherilyn. Part-time is Killips. All right. Never mind. Maybe we're not trying to get another part-timer again this year. Anyways.
That was year 3 contract for the city manager, wasn't it?
There's a special clause. Special clause in there. So this budget, again, there's enforcement activities associated with it, but there are public works expenses as well for the DPW that goes down there and does certain activities, cleaning out and all that stuff too. So you can see the kind of the budget there.
So what are we actually earning off parking?
Negative $2,500.
Yeah.
So
Negative? 2,500?
if it's negative, then why don't we just declare free parking for everybody and then we're 25 $500 to the good.
If Mr. Bauer would like to make that, we can hold a public hearing at the next commission meeting to gauge input on that. So as we kind of went through on Monday night, there's a lot of different views on what parking should be and how it's supposed to work, but the part of the problem that you'll get is if you just open up all free parking, there's not gonna be any control for any of the street parking. So you could have an influx of employees that park all day. You could have tenants parking all day, all night. I mean, and that's not necessarily regulated to anywhere. If you did away with the whole thing, because you'd have to get rid of enforcement, you could have tenants parking down in tourist row. I mean, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but that's the argument that you're gonna get, is that there's no control on that flow of traffic, similar to what we heard Monday night during the commission meeting, and why they're requesting physical meters to be put back in those parking lots, to be able to control and encourage turnover for the shops downtown.
There would also be no funding for the $80,000 worth of snow removal, so that would have to come as a subsidy from the general fund. And then there would be no maintenance being done on those parking lots, so that would be more contributions from other funds. And this fund is set up as a enterprise fund, just like sewer and water. So just
Yeah.
like we discussed there, it should operate as a not-for-profit business with the revenue and the expenses offsetting for zero, which negative 2,500 is pretty close to zero.
Right, I mean, and after all, I mean, we do need to maintain those parking lots.
Right, and that's
So-
if you look at a lot of our cities, that's what the parking funds do. They maintain the parking lots, they help clean, if it's healthy enough, they could help fund the street sweeper to clean out the stalls a little bit more often. It can do a little bit more, but it's gotta be built up in that fashion as well.
Right. Nah, scratch that.
It sounds like we get a lot for our $2,500. We're getting a lot for our negative $2,500.
Yeah, let's move on. I was gonna agree with Commissioner Bauer a bit, but that's a discussion we can have later.
Yeah.
All right, so that's parking. If you'd be so kind to hop to page 50, park and deck. These are the revenues and expenditures associated with the park and deck in the downtown. You can see revenues are kind of static, not a lot of increases or decreases per se. Estimated revenues are coming in at next year about $867,900. The associated expenditures are for some staff members that maintain it, some of the DDA or the Public Works employee that covers the downtown, some enforcement activities, Sherilyn working out on the gate. Capital outlay, we do have a capital outlay item in there that's for the new gate that we are looking to install, hopefully clean up some areas. Large cost, obviously, with this is still the ongoing debt. Total debt payment next year looks like to be about $467,000. But there's a light at the end of the tunnel. 4 more years? 3 more years?
2026, November.
Yeah, so
I believe that's.
3 to 4 more years. And then you can buy all the champagne you want to celebrate. So that's the parking deck in a nutshell. Any questions, concerns, comments regarding the parking deck?
Let's get a gate that lasts 4 years.
Yeah, well, yeah.
This one wouldn't have a gate, from what I understand, Brian. I don't know how much you've looked into it, but it's the license plate reader.
Yeah, we're hoping to get a license plate reader. There's a couple things we have to figure out, but there is one that I saw in one of my magazines, but it's a license plate reader. So they pull in, it snaps the license plate, and then one way or another, it either, I don't remember, I think you may be able to pay it forward and have an account that it deducts from it, or it may even have the capability of sending you the bill based on your license plate number. So if you don't have a proxy card, you're an out-of-towner, you pull in, you pull out, some of them will send you a bill, just kind of like the toll booths on the turnpikes in Illinois and Pennsylvania. So it's kind of a similar system to that, but and it's historic, or just in general, it's always the arms that break on those darn things. And that's what we're having a lot of issues with. So if we can just do away with the arm, we should be able to do away with a lot of problems, but
Can we do that in our parking lots?
maybe. Maybe.
50,000 times how many?
Yeah, but it's cheaper than kiosks.
Maybe.
Man, we'll see.
Maybe. So, with that, that is the budget. What? Oh, no. Unfortunately, Bonnie, you made a noise and you reminded me we didn't go over IT budget. Did we?
Yeah, computer purchases.
Never mind.
We skipped sewer and water capital funds reserves, but they're fine.
Yeah. We went over them. So,
All right, anybody have any questions for city manager or finance director or?
so that is your budget in general. That is where we're going for next year. Just to kind of wrap up the night, unless you guys have more discussion, there wasn't any hits or wishes. Obviously, there's a discussion coming up in the future regarding a demolition. And Kristen had one thing to correct on that transfer for one of the TIFAs or LDFA, one of the two. But there wasn't a lot of anything else. So I mean, there won't be a need for tomorrow, there won't be need for Monday. And we'll just move into the public hearings scheduled for the beginning of May. If everybody's on board with that.
Yep. Anybody have any questions? Commissioner Miller?
I just have a comment. Everybody who worked on this, Kristen, Robin, all the administration people, this is great. This was a great budget. I know how frustrating it can be, and even when we're asking you questions, I know how frustrating this is, but you guys did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you,
My
sir.
pleasure.
Yeah, I agree. It was a little bit easier. I don't know why. The format really hasn't changed, but it was a little bit easier to follow this year, I think. And I think going through it in this meeting, step by step like that, really helps. And the shading helps.
The snacks.
And yeah, snacks. Appreciate the fact that you're keeping the services for the community in order, and that we can add firefighters back to make sure that we're ensuring public safety and that we're getting some of the things done that we have to. You know, we all wish there was a lot more money for bigger projects and for more street projects, but we'll deal with those as we can. And I think the staff and the administration did a great job this year at getting us through the winter and certainly filling out the year. And I think we've been guaranteed that we'll have all the facilities open on time this year. And we appreciate all the that hard work. So I don't think this has been a pretty issue-free year. I think that people have been very happy with the city and the city administration and all the staff's work, so we appreciate that. And I know I haven't been hit up with too many things. We've got a lot of pothole comments, and there's some other comments, but those are things that we can certainly work on going forward. I thought the comments at our Monday meeting were awesome, and it was good to see more citizen participation, and we'd like to see a lot more of that. So I don't know if anybody has any more questions or comments on the budget. So we'll move on to C, matters presented by the public. Anybody in the audience have any? Zero chairs full, everybody left. So any matters presented by the city commission? Commissioner Twardy, you want to make the magic motion?
Move to adjourn.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?